This video is to show you how to use CloudExtend when creating an assembly build with inventory detail on the header and component level. To get things started, we'll need to build a template for the assembly build record type. To do this, we'll have to go down to create new records, or you can click on search and download, but for the demo purposes, I'm going to select create new records. It's going to bring us to the 3-step process. The first step, we're going to choose and search for the assembly build. So in this case, it's in alphabetical order. I'm going to select assembly build. So here for the video, I'm actually going to add in all of the fields, and then we'll review all the fields that I've added to the template. All right, so I've added all of the fields for the assembly build template. So let's review some of the fields that we've added. So here you can see that I've added subsidiary, item, location, quantity, and then if I go down a little further, you can see inventory detail. So within this scenario, I do have an assembly build that requires a serialized item to be built. So that's why I added inventory detail, because that serialized item will have a serial number associated with it. So here with inventory detail, this is the header inventory detail. Scroll down a little further, you can see that there's inventory assignment list. And being that it is a build for a serialized item with a new serial number, we have added the receipt inventory number field onto the inventory assignment list. And then we've also added quantity. And then if we go further, we do have the component list. So this is going to be the sub list of the assembly build. So very standard, we have item and quantity as the component fields. And then if we scroll down even further, we do have component inventory detail. So this is going to be the inventory details for the component items that are serialized. So in this case, inventory assignment lists, the field that I've added is going to be the issue inventory number. The reason why I've added the issue inventory number rather than receipt is being that we have these serial numbers already within the system. So this is going to be from a pick list of serial numbers that we associate to those component items. And we've also added quantity within the inventory detail of the component items. Now that we have all of the fields added into the template, let's click on continue, click on yes. And here you can save it as a template and name it however you want. So let's click on save. And I'm just going to keep the name and keep the description. If you want to share within your organizations, you can click on and toggle this on. But for now, I'm going to keep it untoggled. I'm going to click on save and enter data. And it's going to save my template onto my session of CloudExtend. All right, so the template's saved. And let's continue on and let's review the landscape of this template and figure out how we can actually use this to create your assembly build with inventory detail information. And to make things easier for us to follow along, I've created the same template but loaded onto a different sheet. But I've also color coded this. So if I go into sheet 2 right here, you can see that I've color coded all of the fields. So from column C to column I, those are all of my fields within the header level. From column J to column K, that's going to be my sublist fields for the component items. And if we scroll to the right a little bit, you can see that from column L to N, I have this color coded in orange, and this is going to be the inventory detail fields for the component items of this assembly build. And for you, if you want to color code this, you can definitely do that with the CloudExtend template. This will not affect any of the operations for the uploads and downloads. So as long as you color code it, you can make it easier for you to visibly see which field you're going to be filling out. So for column C to column I, like I said, this is going to be the header levels, the subsidiary, item, and location. Pretty standard for your header fields of an assembly build. Same thing with quantity right here. And then the inventory detail, these are going to be the fields for the inventory detail of the serialized item that we're going to be building out for the assembly build. And then when it comes to the component list item and quantity, pretty standard for those fields as well. You just fill those out when it comes to the assembly build for all of those component list items. And then from column L to N, and these are going to be the fields that you will need to fill out and go through a pick list to find a serial number that you can associate to those component items that are serialized. All right, so now that we have a better understanding of how to create a template for the assembly build record type, let's put it into action. So let's go into the tab right here for work order builds. And within this tab, I already have some demo data to make it easier for us to understand and follow along. But when it comes to some of these columns in the header level, let's go through it and explain to you how we can actually implement and load and create these assembly builds. So when it comes to subsidiary, you can see that I've added my subsidiary. My item is going to be a serialized item. The location is Boston and the quantity is 2. And the reason why you see that I've repeated this 4 times, I'll explain to you in just a moment once we talk a little bit more about the component sublists. But as long as we have this data filled out within the header level of these standard fields, then that's something that we can proceed on to the inventory detail for the serialized item. So the inventory detail from column G to column I, so those are the fields that we would need to fill out when we actually are working with serialized items for assembly build. So column H right here, you can see that receipt inventory number field. So the receipt inventory number field is a field that will allow you to manually insert a brand new serial number. So it's going to be associated to the serialized item that we're going to be building a assembly build for. So in this case, you can see that there's 2 serial numbers right here. And the reason why is because of the quantity of 2 within this quantity field in the header. So once there is quantity of 2, we need to add 2 serial numbers. So you can see that I've added PO 01 and 02. And then when it comes to the quantity, I've added 1 and 1. So these two have to be 1 and 1, which will equate to that quantity of 2 in the header field. And explaining to you why I've repeated the header fields here 4 times. The reason why I have to repeat it 4 times is because of the sublists or the component list fields that I've added when it comes to the items. So you can see that there's 4 rows that I've added for the item component sublists. And when I added 4 of these, we need to have matching rows within the header to tell the system that all of this information is going to be within one record that I'll be creating. If I scroll over to the right a little bit, you can see that I've repeated serial lot item 1 twice. And the reason why I repeated it twice is due to the fact that it's going to require a quantity of 2 of the serialized lot item 1 to build the serial item that we have for the assembly build. So within the quantity of 2, I have to repeat it twice. These 2 items right here, the ASY2, ASY3, is going to be a quantity of 20, but those are not serialized or there's no serial number associated with it. So that's where I can just keep that blank when it comes to the next following step when it comes to the inventory detail. So here in the inventory detail of the component sublist, you can see that I've added a serialized L0001 serial number. And this is actually a serial number that's within the system. You can go down to the bottom right here that says cell operation. And it's going to give me an option to search for serial numbers that are associated to the serial lot item right here. Let's go back in here. Let's just make sure that, yep, we do have the serial L0001. And then same thing when it comes to the 0002, it's going to populate that serial number for me to use. And then when it comes to the quantity, very similar to the inventory detail of the quantity in the header. If there's going to be a quantity of 2 that's going to be associated with it in the component sublist, I'll just have to add 1 and 1 for the 2 serial numbers. And this will equate to the quantity total within the quantity field of the component sublist. All right, so now that we have a better understanding, let's go through the process and let's create this assembly build with the CloudExtend application. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna go to upload to NetSuite and I'm gonna leave this toggled on. You can actually untoggle it and it's gonna allow you to upload everything within the table. But being that this is just one record, you can leave that toggle on. But here I'm gonna go down to upload records. And in just a few seconds, it's gonna read the cells within the table. And once it reads all the cells within the table itself, it recognizes that we're going to be creating one record. And you're going to see that in column B, it's going to generate an internal ID for the assembly build itself. So once you see this internal ID return, let's go down to reload records. And then we're going to reload selected records. And once I reload and refresh it, you can see column G for the internal ID. It's going to return two separate internal IDs because of the two different serial numbers that we're going to create and associate to the serialized item. Now that we have uploaded this into NetSuite, let's take a look at it in the NetSuite UI. And as you can see, it has the internal ID here, 71746, that matches the internal ID in CloudExtend. And we do also have the transaction date letting me know that I've uploaded for today. So if I drill down into this, we can take a look at the assembly build that we have just created. You can see the serial item that we have uploaded with CloudExtend. The inventory detail has a green check mark, but let's drill down into it. And you can see that the PO 01 and 02 has been uploaded for a quantity of 1 each, which equal to 2. And if we go down to the components, there were 3 items, but we had 4 rows inside of CloudExtend. And the reason why there's 4 rows is because of the serial lot item 1 has to be repeated twice to match the quantity that it's going to be associated with it, but also because it's going to have 2 serial numbers associated with that item. Now we're going to go into the inventory detail and take a look. And as you can see, the serial number right here for the 1 and 2, as well as the quantity of 1 and 1, will equal to the quantity of 2 for the component serial lot item 1. This concludes the video on how to use CloudExtend when creating assembly build with inventory detail on header and component level. If you need further support, please visit our support site at support.cloudextend.io.